So again, we are here at the Future of Work stage, where we're discussing all the things we've learned in the last year from working remotely, and the ways that we can create a fairer, more productive society when it comes to how we work together. Our next session starting now is titled "The Future of Work is a Scam." And I'm really excited for this very frank conversation about the intersections between AI, millennial burnout, self-care, and intergenerational trauma. The conversation is with Tricia Hersey, the founder of the NAP Ministry, and will be in conversation and moderated by Jonnie Penn, who is an AI researcher at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University, as well as a doctoral researcher in the History and Philosophy of Science department at the University of Cambridge. So Jonnie and Tricia will be having an amazing conversation. Here's Jonnie now. I will hand it off to you and have a great session. See you in a bit.
I work in AI, and they always say that AV is harder than AI, and it is one of the reasons I'm mistrusting of technology, and one of the reasons that I'm very honored to be here today with Tricia Hersey, who's the founder of the NAP Ministry, as you've just heard. And if you've never heard of the NAP Ministry, it's a movement, really a global movement that highlights rest as resistance. And today we're going to talk about and be frank about the reasons that movement is needed, particularly in relation to artificial intelligence and advanced technologies. The NAP Ministry is informed by Black liberation theology, by womanist theology, by Afrofuturism, by reparations theory, somatics, and community organizing. And as you've heard, we're going to question the kind of disingenuous optimism that the future of work is so often kind of carried on. And we're going to explore why instead things like rest and trauma and addiction offer what we think is a firmer understanding of modern life and techno-labor. So with that said, I'd like to welcome Tricia in. Tricia, are you with me?
Yes, hey. I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah. Can you hear me all right?
You sound wonderful.
Great. Okay. So could you maybe just to get us going, could you introduce yourself and the path that brought you to see NAP Ministry as the intervention that you wanted to take forward? Just kind of bring us in on how that came to be.
Yeah, I love this question. I've been asked it so many times. I love to share it because it really, my name is Tricia Hersey. I'm founder of the NAP Ministry, born and raised in Chicago in the States and here now in Atlanta, Georgia. And so the way I got to this movement and this energy of just experimenting, this was really an experimentation, a project that really was just something that I was trying to do to solve a problem in my own life. It was a very deeply personal experience with me suffering from trauma, from exhaustion, from burnout, from being in a grad school program. I was in seminary studying theology, and Black Lives Matter was heating up at the time. So this was in 2013 when all of this idea really came to me. I was working in the archives as an archive assistant at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, really looking at plantation labor and cultural trauma and the trauma that those who suffer from racial terror in the South during Jim Crow terrorism were really under. I was really interested in what that was doing to the body. And at the same time, I myself was suffering from this trauma of exhaustion, of having a child, of being, in poverty, of trying to finish school and raise a child and be in this really intensive program. Academia to me is really the seat of grind culture in so many ways, how it pushes us to just ignore our bodies. And so I was really in the seat of that, and I just began to see myself as, I began to just experiment with what rest could do for my own body. I was not thinking about any type of global movement. I was not thinking about any type of, this is going to be something that could help save everyone. I just knew it was going to save me. And I guess in a way, when I think of womanism, that really is the seat of womanism, and the heart of that movement is that no one is free until I'm free. This interconnected idea of being able to work with each other, of this global connection between us. And so knowing that it was helping my body, it began to, of course, spread in a way, because all of us are under, capitalism, under white supremacy, under grind culture, under all of these toxic systems that look at our bodies and look at us as only a tool for production. And so it really started off as a really personal experimentation, what rest could do for me, at the same time really touching base with my ancestors and what was going on plantations in the South, and really deeply getting into the history of what that trauma did to our bodies, and what wisdom we could take from that.
So tell me a little bit about what you've learned. I mean, you have now hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. You're big on Twitter. You've got this response to your own experience. How has it changed your view of the problem?
Yes. Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, it's been dark. I will say that, like thinking about the idea of like resting and napping, and people first encounter the work and they just like, this sounds so beautiful, and I can lay down, there's beautiful pillows and blankets, and there's this gorgeous idea of softness, which is part of the work. But what I've learned in engaging with so many people over the years is that we are deeply traumatized. There has been deep abuse, and that grind culture is violence. So when I say grind culture, I'm saying this collaboration between white supremacy and capitalism. It's the same energy that was created on slave plantations. That's how the history of this entire culture in America was founded, is around, and all over the world, really around on the backs and labor of enslaved Africans. And so when I looked at what was really happening on plantations, what was really happening to the body, the violence of grind culture, that is in contemporary culture right now. It's the exact same thing. And so what has been so startling is to see how many people really believe that their worth is attached to how much they do and produce. When I say they believe it, they deeply are brainwashed to the point of suicidal exhaustion, like don't believe that they're worthy if working 10, 12-hour days, having no days off, like really seeing their bodies as simply a tool for capitalism's production. And so what I've seen is a total disattachment from our own bodies. I've seen people who really believe that they don't deserve rest. And so when I say that grind culture is violence, when I say that we have been under a system that has been traumatizing our bodies, allowing us to disconnect from our bodies, pushing our bodies to the point of exhaustion, sleep deprivation is a public health issue and it's killing us. It's not in any way dramatic. It's literally killing our bodies from a biological standpoint, but also a spiritual standpoint, a social justice standpoint, from a political standpoint. We are dying a slow spiritual death and a biological physical death because of the ways that we are attached to capitalism and the ways in which we are ignoring our body's need to rest, which is really a human right.
Well said, yeah. And actually historians are starting to trace some of these genealogies now and showing that, Caitlin Rosenthal's a historian of automation, looking at how enslaved people were treated like cogs on slave plantations. And then there's people like Karen Levy who are looking at the kind of automated trucking industry today. Or in the news, we read about, Amazon workers who every minute of their day is accounted for. Like you are not embellishing, you're describing truth of our modern society. So before we go deeper, I want to back up one step for viewers that may not have heard the term intergenerational trauma before. Like, how do you bring people into that term? Yeah,
I think it's definitely, I really think it's a term that is felt. I think when you hear intergenerational trauma, you immediately try to understand what could that be? What could that look like? But we have to understand that we are all under trauma in some way, shape, or form. There's collective trauma that has happened to us, depending on your particular unique story, your particular unique origin story, your history, your ethnic background. There's collective trauma that we as a culture are under. And then there's these individual traumas that happen to us daily that we all have suffered from. And so when I talk about intergenerational trauma, to bring people into that, I think I talk about history. It's so important that people understand that this work for me was really started from me digging deep into the history of what has happened in our world. And so without that, you'll be living and creating and working and not understanding like that this all comes from somewhere. And so when I was in seminary, I was an archivist working in the archives, and my work was working in the African American collection. And so I was studying cultural trauma. I was studying the comfort women, you know, and during the war. I was looking at also the Holocaust as well. But then I was really grounded in looking at Jim Crow terrorism in the South and the racial trauma of that. And so all cultures have collective trauma. And so it is this deep seated abuse that has happened to us. It is oppression connected in every single way. It is the ways in which this culture doesn't see us as human beings, doesn't see us as full divine people worthy of care, worthy of freedom, worthy of liberation. And so I want people to like really touch base with their family history, but also look at the history of the culture that they find themselves in. And so intergenerational trauma is just trauma that has happened, you know, that continues to happen, has happened over centuries. This ongoing history, this ongoing oppression that we are faced with and that we navigate. Human beings are able to navigate this trauma, but what lies beneath that is that we really have to understand that we have been traumatized. So I think a lot of the work around the NAP ministry is just examining and uplifting the fact that this has happened. Most people think that this is just normal. It's just normal to be exhausted every day. It's just normal, you know, to go to work and be sick and be like, I gotta go to work because I'm sick. It's just like, that's just the normal pace of things. So this is really a disruption to say, this is not normal for us to be pushing human bodies in this way. It's not normal. And so I think that's really when we can begin to get underneath what intergenerational trauma is.
Well said. It makes me think of a friend described to me once. I was explaining to him that I was feeling stressed, and he's like, you know, the concept of stress originated in describing steel. You know, it's about metal. And we use it now comfortably about, you know, our bodies that really aren't suited for the same sort of, you know, quote unquote stress. So I'm curious about a couple of things. Where I want to start here is, you know, this session's about the future of work. The future of work is, I Googled it before this, has 2.5 or so billion results on Google, you know, big, powerful institutions like OECD and the International Labour Organization and, you know, The Economist and McKinsey, you know, magazines and consultancies, a lot of narrative work, money being put behind telling us what the future of work is. And when you were just describing your work a second ago, you were just saying, you know, instead of looking forwards, you're looking back to history for inspiration and connection.
Yes.
I'm curious what you think is lost in conversations when we're looking forward and talking about the future of work. What would you see as important to center in that conversation?
Yeah, this idea, I love this. You know, I'm really, really deeply influenced by the idea of thinking about the future. You know, and so when the future of work, what I think is being lost is that to be able to build this new future that we think is going to be settled in some type of liberative stance, we have to really look at what was before. The future of work has never been liberating. The future of the work has never been in any way, shape, or form for the worker, for the people. Work in capitalism has been deeply about how much can we extract, take, steal, you know, get from, and how much can we be able to like push someone so that our bottom line is higher. It looks at profit over people. And so until we can begin to really wrap our head around the idea that we're going to have to give up some power and some control and some reparations are going to have to be put up, that we can't keep going forward doing the same thing, you know. And so to really, I think what's being lost is that we're not centering that this idea of work has always been that of oppression. It has always been an oppressive type thing. So how are we going to build the future of it without uplifting that? So we're just going to keep trying to go forward and ignoring this huge elephant in the room that, hey, the way work has always been, the way work is now, it has been deeply, deeply disconnected from humanity, from the earth. It's killing the earth, it's killing the people. It's about profit over people. How can you push a body until you can get another dime out of it, another penny? And so there's this scale, there's this really imbalance in the idea that we can just continue on trying to create this new future when we haven't even addressed what's happening and how it was centered and begun, like looking at the foundation of it.
Right. Yeah, it would be a little less cool to talk about the future of oppression, but the future of work allows you to kind of like say things without saying things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, totally. It's like, how are we going to keep going forward? It doesn't make sense to me in a lot of ways, but it's more of the same. It's more of the same trickery and, ways to get people to go. I hear a lot of people speak about this idea around, we got to have a new world, like this new world got to come, this liberated world. But where do we think these ideas are going to come from? Like, if we need a new world, then you're saying that this world in some way needs help. So where are these new and inventive and liberating and ideas going to come from if we're coming from the same space? And so that's why I think resting and napping and this idea of connecting back with our bodies is disruption for us to be able to build and invent this new world that we're trying to get to, this new liberated world. This everything is going to have to change. It's like another world is possible, and everything is going to have to be flipped on its head and disrupted and pushed back at, so that we can really get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you about this. I find I work in artificial intelligence, as you and I have discussed, previous to this, and AI has a lot of hope put into it as a vision of the future. We have an automated society. Critics say, well, hold on, automation is never full. There's always hands behind the scenes keeping it going. Mechanical Turk, Amazon's clickwork platform, employs 500 million or 500 million people or something like that around the globe. The question is, what is the right way? If I want to speak to like an individual's experience watching this session right now, who might know some of what you're saying to be true, but doesn't necessarily have the feeling of hope and the kind of somatic experience of hope to actually take ownership over the future that they want. And it's hard when you hear things about AI and technologies changing our world constantly, because you think, well, should I have hope in this, or is the world all about to change on me? Groups in the kind of McKinsey side of the world broadcast that the future will change constantly. My question for you, I guess, is just like, walk someone through the first steps of rest. Like, how do you actually get from hopelessness to hope that's a different type of hope?
So good. What a great question. My theory and what I believe is that true oppression is when we have lost the ability to hope and imagine, when you cannot see another way. When I tell people, you know what, you can rest for 10 minutes and close your eyes, they're like, no, I cannot. Like, I literally have people tell me that every single day. Like, they're like, that sounds like a dream. Like, they're like, that sounds nice, but I could never do that. Think about that for a minute. You could never, you don't even have the ability to have this hope within you to think that even a 15-minute resting your eyes session. I'm not even talking about a full nap. I'm talking about just a 15 minutes of sitting, closing your eyes, and just connecting with your body. People literally tell me that they could never do that. That just sounds like a pipe dream. And so I think the first step is people getting back to the ancient ways and the ancient technology of our bodies. Our bodies are their own technology. I know we want to keep going with the other technology, but our bodies is its own technology. And when we can tap into this site of liberation within us, we can disrupt, even if it feels like, I feel guilty about this, I feel shame about this, it just feels like something that just seems like out of control. still do it. You know what I mean? That's the idea of resistance. So when I say rest is resistance, resistance really means something. The idea of resisting toxic systems and toxic violent ways that have been centered in our culture for centuries, it's going to be difficult. But I think the first step is connecting back with the body. If it's 1 minute of closing your eyes, if it's like my grandmother Aura, who was a refugee of Jim Crow terrorism in the South, who was working 2 jobs, raising 9 children, deep poverty, she would sit every single day in between going from this job, working horrible hours, to another job, cleaning houses for people. She would close her eyes and meditate for 30 minutes. And we were like, what are you doing? You know, like, I just thought she was so eccentric. And she was like, every shut eye ain't sleep. I'm resting my eyes. I'm listening. And so this idea of listening to our bodies over what the systems say, of like really honoring that, I feel like I could close my eyes right now. I want to rest. I want to take back and reclaim my body as my own. This is a reclamation. You know, capitalism and white supremacy has told us for centuries that our bodies don't belong to us, that we have no sovereignty over it, that our bodies belong to the system that we're trying to make money from. I'm thinking about my ancestors, enslaved Africans on plantations. Their whole autonomy of who they were, their body didn't belong to them. It belonged to the system to be able to make money for. And so that energy still is here. I would say slowly look at this as a meticulous love practice. Slowly reconnect with your body in ways that seems odd to you at the first. You know, close your eyes in the morning. Don't respond to an email immediately. You know, like, begin to build this lifelong rest practice that's gonna really be centered in you reclaiming your divine body as your own, of saying that this site is mine. Whether or not I got to go to work 20 hours tomorrow at a job because I got to pay bills, because capitalism and poverty is still real, that you can still come back and spiritually connect with your body and shift things that are happening to you on a real individual level. And from that, you'll see it be collective. It's really about choice and people making small individual decisions that are eventually going to collectively change the entire culture around what resting is. Understanding that you've been bamboozled and you don't even know what rest really is. And so that is evidence in a beautiful thing. It's beauty in that. It's beauty in understanding and getting knowledge that you can now understand how powerful your body really is and how it belongs to you.
Okay, so tell me, if that's step one, talk to me about addiction, because I've been wondering the last couple of days, looking at just the kind of the way we inhabit apps like Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or workaholism generally, and this kind of you know, endless quest to just give our time and our bodily energy away. Talk to me about addiction. Like, how do you break that cycle for people listening who don't know how to get past day 2 or day 3, day 4?
I really think that when we talk about social media and talk about like the design of the entire thing, that it really was a real true awakening for me when I started to research and understand what the designers were doing when they were thinking about social media, when they were creating the idea of scrolling and what that's doing to the brain. Like, I never really thought that. I was always just like, this is an app. Let's get on it and let's go. But when you start to unpeel and look, even if you just do really quick research, if you just Google something or just do some quick research around what the designers were really doing when they created these apps, they were really trying to reprogram, you know, our brains in a way. What scrolling is doing and what that does, it keeps you never satisfied. It's totally changing the whole idea of how you look at things, looking at, so when I think of neuroscience in the brain, like all of those things are really interesting to me. But I think for people to really get the awakening that this is what is happening, a lot of people don't realize that. That's the beauty of these things, that they're like these invisible things that are created and you don't know the background of. And so that's why it goes back to history. It goes back to just like awakening your mind to what really is happening. And so I believe resting can do that. I believe resting can allow us to wake up, to tap into the ideas around what is really happening to us and to really feel. We're so disconnected from our bodies that the system can do whatever it wants to do to us. And we probably will be like, okay, is that happening? Because we haven't taken the time to stop. And so I think when I think about addiction, I think about social media addiction, that is truly something that is happening to, I would say, most of the culture. I talk with people all day. I'm like, please get offline. Please get off for 30 minutes. Instead of them getting off for 30 minutes, they're emailing me a 10-page document of why they can't get off. And I'm like, you literally could have been, I just like, my work is to kind of help break people out of this idea, to be like, during this time, and you could have taken a nap, you could have closed your eyes, like this idea of choosing your time. And so it's deep. It's a deep, 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 like I said, this is some dark work that I've been able to uncover around this, of what this culture has really done to people. People are in pure trauma. People are disconnected. They're not well. They don't believe that they have any ability to really take ownership over themselves. And so I love this idea of us uplifting the fact that we've been brainwashed. To me, awareness is part and number one of all of this work, of justice work, of liberation work, is just true illumination and awareness, because it's going to take time. It's going to be a lifelong battle. And I tell that to people every day. This is going to be for the rest of your life, dismantling and unraveling from grind culture, dismantling and decolonizing your mind around resting and what your body is. And so I tell people to just take it slow. It's not going to be no quick tip, BuzzFeed, here's 10 things to do. It's really going to be about healing our personal and collective trauma, slowly reclaiming your body as your own, and really understanding what's happening to you. We have been bamboozled. We have been scammed. All of it is not true. Like, you can rest. And so giving people, just saying that to people sometimes, a permission to know that really can shift a lot of things. And I've watched it shift people's lives. People have changed their whole lives around understanding labor, and understanding their bodies, and understanding what rest really can be for them.
Well said. And the line, I can't remember if I told you this before when we were speaking, but the line that comes to mind for me is, which is the better invention, the internet or the weekend? Because both things had to be developed and popularized and normalized.
Right.
The weekend through struggle,
Yes.
over a long period of time. So also what you're saying, so this is a longer, I'm going to just step back for a sec and return to a different theme that's been in a lot of what you've said, but I have to give a bit of context. So Mara Mills, the professor at NYU, she works on disability studies and is interested in AI as well. And one of the theories that she uses to do her work is the kind of disabling environments, that when we talk about disability, we often kind of do it to this blame lens, that it's penalizing someone for their particular makeup, as opposed to looking at the environment as either generous, the infrastructure is generous and welcoming, or it's disabling. And I think of, in the future of work, what we're being told is glorious. And I'm just saying, from like previous sessions in CogX today, I was listening, and they have like these kind of dashboards that are being developed to measure everything. And I mean they as in your boss, measuring your sleep schedule and giving you supposedly liberatory or emancipatory access into your health through AI, and sensor technology. Where I'm going with this is, we know that there's something called sick building syndrome, which is, people in big air-conditioned buildings get actually sick from that environment. The sensory technology measuring people, how they work, is another reason, I think, to add another stressor at work that people probably aren't as excited about as companies might be to integrate. But what all of this, where all this is going, is towards collective notions of rest. So what I want to know from you and your experiences is, like, what is the inverse of grind culture? Because, and like tangibly, because for example, a friend in London said, we should have a new bank holiday every year so that in 250 years we just don't have to work anymore. And the fact that has to be a joke, I think, proves that the future of work is a joke. Because if we were serious about things getting easier, we'd make commitments like that. That gives us 250 years. And it shines a light on the fact that automation is not what it sounds like. It's not liberatory. It's everything you've brought to us already. But so where I'm going, my question is, I want you to talk about Sabbath and that your decisions for you, because I want the audience to know about that and for you to comment on it, and just other tools. Like, should we be
Yes.
making
Yes.
mandatory like paid sabbatical
Yes.
for
Yes.
people in the years to come? But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's happening now with the whole working from home and remote work from due to the pandemic, to me, really ripped some veils off and ripped some lies off and allowed us to kind of peek into a little bit about the scam of it all. Because for decades, people have been asking to work from home. Disabled people, people with families, people who didn't have transportation. We have been begging corporations, can I just maybe one day a week work from home just because I have a sick child that I'm caring for and I can take, and we've been told no. It's been no. It's been no for no reason. And so now that everyone is working from home, I was just reading an article that it was saying like close to 90% of people like are working from home, and and we're also watching a lot of industries crash right now. Like I was just reading an article yesterday about how people they can't even find people to work no more. People are like, I'm not coming to that job. There's just like this whole like general strike labor movement that's happening quietly in the restaurant industry right now in the States. Like these restaurants are like, no, we can't get anyone to work, because during the time when people were off, when restaurants were closed and the pandemic was at its height, people got clarity. People got some awareness about, man, this is abusive to be on doing this, and they're paying me only like $3 an hour, and maybe I'll get a tip. This is so they can't even find people to work. And so what I'm understanding is that what has happened now with the pandemic and people ripping back the veil around what these corporations and workplaces are doing to us, it's almost like the gig is beginning to be up. People are being like, wait a minute, this feels wrong. Like I was chilling at home, working from home, and now you want me to go back to the office for what? And so I love it. I love it every single time I see it. And so I think Sabbath is so important, that people can actually look at a Sabbath. I take long Sabbaths for like a month, 2 months sometimes, where I'm not on any social media and I am not working, but I work for myself. And so I just started working for myself maybe 4 years ago. Pre that, I was deeply, deeply in grind culture and working 2, 3, 4 hour, 2, 3 jobs, working really low income jobs, low wage jobs, trying to just eat. And so for me, it looked like really getting joy from no. Really having some healthy, when I say healthy boundaries, I mean some deep boundaries about absolutely not, and like really that comes with us propping ourselves up spiritually and propping ourselves up and getting back to the fact that you have sovereignty over your body and you can say no. Corporations have tricked us for so long that if we don't get a job here, we can't work nowhere else, or that if you don't do this, then you aren't looked at as a good employee, so stay overtime. Even so, all of that is being revealed as lies. And I think that when you're talking about Sabbath, I'm also thinking about there's a movement with the 4-day work week that I'm really about. I've been doing some work with them and going to be bringing some projects to light next year with them. And so I'm really into all those type of things that can begin to put in place policies that allow people to have systems of care that look more just, that just make more sense. Like 9 to 5 is over. People just working from home, because working at the office because you want them to, is over. Like there's this beginning swelling happening very quietly and silently if you look. And I'm always watching, observing, where people are waking up to the fact that, hold up a minute, like, I don't know, this don't feel right. And so it gets back to what feels right. This don't feel right in my body. This feels like something that you're trying to abuse me. Like, I know I don't want to work for $4 an hour. I'm thinking about in America with the trying to get people to higher wages at fast foods, like the wage movement around $15 an hour, $20 an hour. Like all of that is really swirling. And I think it's so important that we continue to hold on and we continue to keep centering our bodies and centering the idea of imagination, and rest will get us there. Resting will allow us to get these inventive ideas and be able to wake up and just feel clarity to be like, you know what? I don't want to be scammed no more. I don't have to do this. And so that's why when people ask me why rest is so important, it's so important because it connects you back to your body. It's in a somatic way. It allows you to really understand what's going on. It's a portal, you know, it's a place to go in and to get deep, deep, deep information. It's a generative space in that way.
Well said. Okay, so I want to encourage people to ask questions because I'm sure they have questions, and we'd be happy to answer them. I want to just pick up on you know, you were describing this COVID really proving your movement true, that if you let people have a pause, they start to question, you know, that basically getting stuck into the trap of everything all the time is its own way of keeping you in everything all the time, right? Because you don't know better because you're just stuck in it.
It's going,
yeah. And they described this in the New York Times. There's an article about the Great Resignation, that now 25 to 40% of people might, are threatening to leave their jobs. I also really like what you're describing about imagination and hope coming from rest, and imagination coming from rest. There's a really good line by Ruha Benjamin about, you know, the reason that AI impoverishes us, you know, and us being really everybody, is because it forces us to live inside other people's imaginations. It's kind of this enclosure where we have to serve an infrastructure with our kind of data and our activities and be responsive to the kind of statistical feedback mechanisms that shut down as opposed to open possibilities. So the final question I want to ask is a little more real than the rest, which is like, there is a huge racial component in all of this, in racial capitalism, in exploitation and oppression. And in AI, we see this recreated with the gig economy and the sub-gig economy, which is the people that, you know, are being forced to, you know, mine in unsafe conditions to get your smartphone built or our computers built or whatever it may be. How do you see rest relating to white supremacy? What is needed in terms of solidarity in your view?
Rest is a form of resistance because it disrupts and pushes back against white supremacy and capitalism. So white supremacy is the ruling thing that is, you know, for centuries, white supremacy has been using bodies as a tool for evil. And that's just what it's been. Human body is just another tool for it to get its evil. White supremacy also disconnects everyone from their bodies because to believe that this premise, you have to really believe that not everyone is divine, like that one human body is better than another. Like white supremacy really is the deepest scam of it all, because it is continuing to have us living in these lies of who we are and what we are. It strips us of our divinity. It strips us of our spiritual connection to each other. It literally is the engine that is driving all of it. Ableism, patriarchy, you know, capitalism, all of the things are being driven by this deep, sick, toxic idea. And so my whole idea around resting is that it disrupts white supremacy. It says, no, this is my body. It don't belong to you. It's not for you. It's not for you to abuse, for you to create something else. It is mine, and is mine because I was born. And so this work is really about this deep connection of getting us back to our true selves, to our truest nature, to who we really are as people, to really connecting us and saying no to the lies around what we've been told. All the lies around white supremacy, what it's told Black people, what it's told white people. All of it is a full-on scam that we've all been bamboozled by. And so I really think that this whole work is connected under that. And so when people come to the NAP ministry, they're going to be understanding that this work is a deep disruption and pushback to those two toxic systems, white supremacy and capitalism. It's saying no to all of those things.
Well said. Okay, so we have 1 minute remaining, and I want to get your thoughts on two related questions. One is, what do you tell students that are entering the job market? We hear from AI now that if you're going to interview at a tech company, they have printed a list of questions to ask about ethics and things like that. And the other is what do businesses do? If you're a business owner or a student, what do you recommend? In a very short time, unfortunately, because we're getting cut off.
I think just understanding that your job is not your life. I know they're going to be telling you that we're family here, and this is, this is your life, and this is not the center of your world. It is going to be a career path, a calling, trying to connect with the idea of a passion and a calling. And when you do that, you won't give up. You won't donate your body to this system. You won't donate your talents and your mind and your ideas to a system that doesn't see you as a real full human being. So continue to center your humanity. And if something doesn't feel right about a job and they're like working you to death and they're not looking at you as far as being flexible. So I think this goes into the advice of the business owners. Like, we have to be flexible. We have to be inventive and subversive. We cannot continue to go on to this, like you said, this AI idea of it just has to be this way because this is the way we're doing it. No, it doesn't have to be this way. You keep saying it has to be this way, but it doesn't. And we know that to be a lie. And so I think business owners really need to start thinking about systems of care and what that could really look like. Just really for themselves, what a system of caring for another, this collective care for even for your workers, how you can be more humane and just in that relationship.
Well said. I love the idea of centering around the human too. And my partner told me recently about a job that's has gender-based violence, paid and protective leave, unlimited, I'm reading from the list, unlimited menstrual leave for people with uteruses, a personal and professional growth stipend, and a stipend to help you build wealth. Like a job that is for you, that serves you, as opposed to a job that just takes from you.
That's so radical, those things you just listed.
Yeah, well, Tricia, thank you for the work that you do and the radical visions you give us for where we could be going, and other than the future of work, where we could all steer. So on behalf of everyone, thank you again for what you're doing and for sharing your time with us. And we're being asked to close there, so I will end it with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.